Well, despite fears of its flow-through impact, free childcare for Aussie families is done. The Education Minister, Dan Tehan, saying it's back to the future from July 13. From July 20, childcare centres will also lose access to the JobKeeper wage subsidy. Of course, it's big news and somewhat seen as a backflip because the government had just a couple of days earlier said they were sticking with it. So joining us to discuss the implications is Joydeep Hor, founder of People and Culture Strategies. Joydeep, pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you very much for joining us today. Look, it's a big topic, childcare, always sort of implications from various different policies around childcare. What will be the implication of this, do you think, for businesses? Because some of the childcare operators themselves have come out and said, look, no, it's a positive for us. It provides us with a bit more flexibility. G8 came out with that just yesterday, saying it provided more flexibility for it going forward to offer parents. What's your take, though, on the impact on businesses?
Yeah, I think it's a very good demonstration of how everything that has happened in the last few months, and more importantly, everything that's going to happen over the next few months, is so significantly interconnected. So we saw in March and early April that the government introduced a whole raft of reforms, whether we're talking JobKeeper, whether we're talking JobSeeker, whether we're talking this childcare initiative that was introduced. And now, given the way things have panned out, which I think everyone is very relieved that it's not been as bad as what it could have been, the government understandably has to look at that totality of its stimulus packages and all of those initiatives and to see, well, which ones can be wound back. But the point about the interconnectedness is, and what's very relevant for business is, this issue needs to be seen in the context of what is the business in question going to be doing as far as running its business moving forward. And by that I mean, what are the decisions that business is going to be making in terms of, is it going to allow people to continue to work from home? Is it going to perhaps embrace some of the flexible initiatives that a lot of businesses have been forced to embrace over the last 2 months? Or is it going to be saying to its people, no, as you know, things are returning to normal in inverted commas, we need people to be coming back to the workplace? And then the flow-on impact of that is going to be dependent on the circumstances of each individual employee, some of whom are well versed in the utilisation of childcare, some of whom have had to perhaps grapple with that because of the circumstance of the last 2 months. So everything is interconnected, and I think what the real lesson for business here is that no two people within their organisation are going to be, even if they have children of similar ages, are going to be impacted in exactly the same way. And therein lies some of the challenges for businesses around how they deal with this.
I think it's interesting you said that flexible initiatives that businesses are forced to embrace. They're really quite opposing forces when it comes to that, but it means that businesses will have to at least understand their employees a bit more and their particular needs. But a lot of employees, they've taken pay cuts, they've taken reduced hours in the last few months. Are they expecting this sort of favour to be returned to them and paid forward by these businesses when it comes to managing their times and their children?
Well, I think that a lot of businesses have been impacted in very different ways, and some have had to go to their workforce, and it's been more than just you can continue to do what you've been doing from the workplace, but you just need to do it from home, to actually, no, we need you to be working less days, so you move from 5 days to 3 days, or you take a pay cut of 80 to 85% or whatever it might be. But there have been a lot of organisations that have just continued to do their normal work in exactly the same way. And of course, if you're an employee in an organisation where the only difference has really been that you're working from home as opposed to coming into the office, your childcare issue, if we take that as an example, is one of, well, can I still work productively if I'm at home, or should I be having my children in childcare? Of course, if I was going into the office, I'd have no choice in the matter. I'd have them in childcare. But to your specific question around, well, what are employees going to be expecting? A lot of that is going to depend on whether those businesses are able to say to their people, that was just a bad period, here's our plan for recovery, and then it will be up to those businesses to make decisions that they all have to make themselves around, we're willing to give stuff back, or you're going to have to see what happens over the next few months, next few years, to see whether we're in a position to say that we've recovered. So I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all answer for businesses.
This is really tough, though. I mean, I know a lot of people in this situation. There's a lot of people out there who have obviously had a tough few months trying to manage working and kids and childcare and everything all in one with COVID. But going forward, does this act as a bit of a catalyst for change? Because, childcare and work and flexible working and women in the workplace, this is all something that's been I guess, brewing. We've been talking about it for years. There hasn't been a great deal of change. I mean, there's still a long way to go, I think, with this topic. Do you think COVID-19 might be the catalyst to get a bit more change, Joydeep?
I think COVID-19 will be a catalyst and has already been a catalyst for a very radical look, or a radically different way of looking at how people work and what work means to people generally. And that starts with where do people have to work from in order to be productive? It extends to what does a solid working day look like? Are there productivity gains that can happen when you change your mindset? And I think the point around childcare and how that fits with perhaps this radical look is a very important one. It's a shame that it's had to be triggered by COVID, but I often look at these things and say, well, it doesn't matter what the catalyst is. Ultimately, if we are forcing business and if we're forcing government to look at these things in a better way, a more strategic way, and a way that's in the economy's interest and ultimately in the interests of employers and employees, then that's a good thing. But I agree with you that there's still a lot of work to be done on this. From a flexibility point of view, Australia is well behind a number of other countries, countries in Europe, for example, who are far more sophisticated in terms of their approach and their integration of government benefits and provisions to allow for people to juggle all of those competing interests in their career and their life.
But when we're going to be looking so closely at these unemployment figures of the utilisation of labour, wouldn't there be a stronger argument now as any time to actually have the government give some tax deductions and these provisions, as you mentioned, so that people can return to work and that they can stay at work?
I think that it's very easy to talk about these parenthood statements, such as, we need people to be coming back to work and we're going to kickstart things in this particular way. But if I go back to my earlier comment, everything is interconnected. So the ramifications of introducing JobKeeper, having JobKeeper in place, but then at some point taking that away, and that is going to happen, is going to be very significant. There is a level of artificiality to what is transpiring at the moment because of something such as JobKeeper. And I think the problem is that once you introduce something like that, as well-intentioned and as helpful as, without question, it is certainly in some sectors and for some employers, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. And that forces you to then look at other initiatives that you've introduced, such as the childcare one, and you're trying to take from one hand in order to give to the other. And that's the challenge. And I don't say that to be critical of the government, but that is part of the problem that the government now finds itself in.
Yeah, and I think, parents need certainty as well with these sort of policies, as you're talking about, to be able to plan and plan for the future as well. Joydeep, always a pleasure to talk, always a lot to talk about. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks very much.
Joydeep Hor there, founder of People and Culture Strategies.